Was the worst year for a lot of us for our mental as well as physical health. So joining us this morning is best-selling author, coach, and fitness expert, Lisa Goldenthal.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa G, your host. You're at the top of your game, yet the game is changing faster than ever. Strategies that got you here aren't the ones that'll keep you here. The pressure is relentless, and the fear of obsolescence looms large. That's why I'm here. Welcome to the new podcast series, Disrupted: How to Be Gritty and Unlock Performance. This is your chance where I sit down with today's tops in business, mindset, wellness, and success to help you master disruption and thrive.
Thanks for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Imagine achieving billion-dollar success all while defying the limitations of blindness. That's the inspiring story of today's guest, a true trailblazer, bouncing back from blindness at 21, becoming the first blind graduate of Harvard Business School, thriving in Fortune 500 world, and even creating a revolutionary blind CRM. Get ready to be ignited by his resilience and discover how you too can exceed your wildest dreams. I'm thrilled to welcome to the podcast, Chet E. Foster.
Hey, thanks for having me. What a great introduction. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here. Your story inspires me, and I want you guys in the audience to be inspired, on fire, beyond the headlines. We've all heard your incredible stories of overcoming blindness at a young age, but beyond your initial adversity, what were some of the daily challenges you faced that you might not have shared publicly?
Oh, there were so many, from going blind in college or even before that, learning the limitations of my eyesight as I was losing it at a young age and not really knowing what I couldn't see. So, you don't know what you can't see when you can't see it. And so the process of going blind is a bit tricky because you don't know that you're not seeing something until you bump into it. And that is sort of a physically uncomfortable thing when you're hitting it with your body. And then obviously driving a car, learning what you can't see as you're driving a car becomes a lot more consequential. And, the anxiety that goes along with that probably can't be understated. And challenges from, the physical pain of going to the hospital countless times, being questioned in separate rooms from my parents
Oh my
because they
God.
thought my parents might be physically abusing me as I was learning the limitations of my eyesight,
Mhm.
to the emotional, not being able to do the things that a lot of my friends were doing, having to deal with the fact that I couldn't drive at night. I couldn't see well enough to drive a car at night. And then going totally blind in college and having to flush nearly 3 years of university work down the drain towards my medical degree or
Uh-huh.
my pre-med degree, and figuring out what I was going to do next, to not knowing, if I could even help myself, let alone other people in the medical field. And so that was a difficult thing, not knowing how was I going to get to school, to take my university classes, how would I take notes? How would I
Yeah.
consume the information? Reading's pretty important when you're in college. How was I going to get all of that information into my head
Mhm.
without being able to see? And we didn't live in a time of ebooks and audiobooks and things like that. So this was before all of that had really taken flight. So there was a lot. There was a lot just from the mundane of, doing my laundry and being able to find the ingredients to cook what I needed to cook at home,
Mhm.
to, some of the more extraordinary things like, being able to compete and do sports that I wanted to do, or participate in a way that I'd like to in society or class or whatever. Everything became significantly harder after I went totally blind.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that with me. I hope you guys are as impressed as I am with Chad. And can you share like a specific instance where you leverage your blindness to achieve something extraordinary after listening to your bio? Obviously, there was a lot.
Yeah, there are a few of those. I think Probably, I don't know, one of the things that comes to mind for me is out of college, I entered the workforce and I went to work for a top consulting firm,
Mhm.
Anderson Consulting, and they're now known as Accenture. And I entered that job, highly technical technology job. And I realized very quickly that my blindness, the software that I needed to use, my screen reader, didn't work with everything out of the box. It didn't communicate with all of the proprietary software systems out of there. So I taught myself how to write code so that I could do my job more effectively. And it ended up turning into a situation to where I started doing that professionally. People would come to me and ask me if I could help. And so a former colleague from Anderson Consulting contacted me one time and asked me if I could help one of his customers.
Mhm.
And come to find out, there was a CRM system that did not work with the screen reading technology used by the blind. And so I just did what I always did. I sat down, I wrote some code, figured out a way to build a bridge between these two technology systems so that this guy could do his job. And then I later found out that Oracle, the owner of that application, thought it couldn't be done. They said it couldn't be done, it wasn't possible, but I'd already done it. And so I had a client on the call who said, yeah, he did it. He actually built it for us a year or so ago, and I've been using it all the while. And so, needless to say, from that point forward, Oracle started referring me projects and sending me
Wow.
business. And the next thing I know, I was getting called to testify in court cases because it was possible to make it happen. I just happened to be the only person in the world who knew how to do it.
Wow. Well, looking at some of your success pillars, I've read something that you mentioned about choosing your card, and life is like a game of cards. So obviously, one of the worst hands you were dealt was the blindness. But do you want to go into some of your success pillars for business?
Yeah, there are 5 pillars for cultivating resilience. I like to think of these as the anatomy of resilience. And so when I speak professionally, I organize all of my storytelling around these 5 pillars. And the first one is choose your response. And essentially, it boils down to the fact that none of us get to choose all the cards that we're dealt in life, but
Right.
every single person gets to choose how they play their cards. And so you have to be very careful about being intentional about how you choose to show up because, again, none of us control all of our circumstances, but we have to be accountable for our lives and our outcomes. I wasn't responsible for going blind, but I had to be accountable for my life and the outcomes that I had in my life because at the end of the day, it's my life. I've got to own it. And it's
Mhm.
your life. You've got to own it. If you don't own your life, if you don't own your career, who will? The
Correct.
second pillar is you have to tell yourself the right stories. Now, I could have sat down and chosen to tell myself that I've went blind because I've got incredibly bad luck, and that could be one story. Or I could choose to tell myself a better story, a story that I went blind because I'm one of the very few people on the planet who has the strength and the toughness to overcome that and use it to help other people. Now, technically, both of these stories can be true, where one of these stories, the first one, paints me as a victim. But the second story, the better story, is a Jedi mind trick that actually transforms my disability into my strength. See, I told myself that this happened to me because I'm mentally strong enough to deal with it, which, by the way, means I'm mentally strong enough to deal with all of the other curveballs that life will throw at me. So I flipped my disability into a strength, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, the third pillar is you have to visualize your greatness. No, we don't get to control all the circumstances that fall upon us. I certainly did not get to choose the fact that I went blind, but I had to figure out how to make blind look good. If I could never figure out how to make blind look good, how could
Mhm.
I ever move towards acceptance or thriving in my situation? So we have to reimagine a future that's anchored to the reality of our situation, but bold enough to inspire us to do the hard work and take the necessary actions to make it come to life. Now, the fourth pillar is where mindset meets action. This is very important that we not just sit around and think about and only use mindset. Mindset's very important. It gives us a foundation for moving forward, but we have to do the hard work. And again, with the third pillar that I mentioned, having a bold vision of greatness, for ourselves, it can motivate us to do the hard work. And the fourth pillar is where we start the hard work of really getting comfortable with discomfort. Because I believe that if you are never getting outside of your comfort zone, then you're not growing. You see,
Right.
life begins outside of our comfort zones. And
Mhm.
so that's the only way where growth happens is when we edge slightly out of our comfort zone. And the more you get outside of your comfort zone, the more you will notice your comfort zone expanding. And that's because you're expanding. You're expanding into a deeper sense of self and at the same time creating the confidence to experiment, to innovate, to grow and try new things. And the fifth and final pillar is take advantage of your disadvantages. So every perceived disadvantage offers us some advantage if we use it in the right context. So the things that you look at in your life that you can't change, you may view of as a disadvantage. So I would ask the question, how can you put yourself in a position to where instead of that being a liability, it can become an asset for you?
Wow, those are just so powerful, all those pillars. I started this podcast 2020 because we all had to pivot. We all had to become resilient. We all needed to push outside of our comfort zone. And there was always a silver lining if you run into the things that are outside of your comfort zone. And I know you've done this so many times as an athlete, as a business leader. Do you want to jump into what it takes with that kind of mindset that I'm going to go skiing and I'm going to be going down black diamonds at and being blind, or your jujitsu hacks, and then we'll jump into some business success stories.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that my life honestly has been just this experiment of living outside of my comfort zone since I was born. Growing up, learning the limitations of my eyesight was really uncomfortable, bumping
Right.
into things, and then having the emotional and social discomfort of not being able to complete or do the things that a lot of my peers were doing and friends, and then going totally blind in college and having to reinvent myself and figure out what did I want to be when I grow up. The fact that I'm blind, lacing that on top of it, and then getting a dog to guide me around, which was a great liberating thing. But at the same time, I walked into every classroom, every boardroom, every conference room with a 100-pound German Shepherd, and that was uncomfortable at first. But then, the more I kept leaning into these uncomfortable situations, the fact that it was forced upon me, I didn't really have much of a choice. The more I noticed that I really craved the discomfort because I felt like it was forcing me to grow in new ways. And that eventually got to the point to where, I would travel across the world to Asia, to Singapore or China or wherever to do some work or give a talk, not being able to see, just me and my trusty dog, and still getting to the gym to do my workout. And now it's gotten to the point to where, yes, I learned how to ski at 38 years old, totally blind, and regularly ski black and sometimes even double black diamonds. And it's
Wow.
because I believe it offers me the opportunity to grow and to push my edges. And that's a phenomenal thing to do, and I enjoy doing it with skiing, but skiing's a bit more seasonal. So about 2.5 years ago, I took up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because that's what every nearly 46-year-old does who's totally blind, right? Is figure out how do we
Of
get on the
course.
mat and see if I can, get somebody to, uh, if I can fight somebody off from choking me or arm barring me or whatever kind of joint lock you're thinking of. Because it's totally accessible, there's no striking involved. It's possible when I can't see. So it's all hands on. If your listeners aren't familiar with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's all hands on. There's no striking because with striking, I would just end up being the punching bag. So it's all hands on, chokeholds and joint locks and things like that. But the beautiful thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is it really forces you to get comfortable with discomfort because the first few times you've got a black belt who puts you in a chokehold and there's no way out. It's terrifying. It feels like your head is being put inside a vacuum cleaner bag. But the more you move towards that discomfort,
Yeah.
funny thing happens, right? You learn to settle into the terror. Instead of panicking and having your adrenaline take over, which is the default for most everybody, especially when they start, you learn to control your breathing, bring your heart rate down, step through the fear and start calmly looking for a way out. And a lot of times, those seemingly inescapable chokeholds that you find yourself in actually do have a way out if you can just stay calm and relaxed enough to look for them. And that's helpful whether or not you're training on the mat, but maybe you've got something in your personal life or your professional life that feels like it has you in a chokehold. So if you get comfortable with discomfort, you'll notice it expand and you'll notice your ability to deal with stressful situations get better because you've already done the hard work to edge outside of your comfort zone. And that will allow you to take on more and more opportunities for growth and stay calm while you're doing it.
Well, you inspire me to no end. I know that even people that don't want to go skiing with no disabilities, because I'm a skier and I know it's obviously scary, the rocks and trees and things like that. So
Yep.
in those anti-fragile small steps that you've taken to big success translate into business success?
Well, yeah, I think it's all about getting comfortable with discomfort and demonstrating whether it's on the mountain or on the mat or, in the boardroom that you can take on more and more opportunities for growth and advancement. And so, yeah, I've had the opportunity to work on, like I said, I've done technology deals before. I've been a consultant writing code. I have led the pricing and pricing strategy and all those things related to multi-billion-dollar commercial outsourcing transactions and use my knowledge of technology that I had to learn because I went blind to do the work more efficiently with the hundreds of template Excel models that we used because I could write code to connect my software to the back end of the spreadsheet program that we used and then automate a lot of the work that we were doing that the company used across our entire department so that we could save everybody time and money. And then moved into increasing positions of responsibility, was a senior director of pricing strategy and solutions for a large international federal IT company. And so brought in billions of dollars in revenue for the
Wow.
company there. And then ended up working at Red Hat, where I led both the global deal desk there as well as our corporate finance department, where we obviously had a good run at Red Hat, and they're still doing extremely well. But leading teams as large as 200 people, where we closed the largest ever software acquisition, a $34 billion transaction when IBM bought Red Hat back in 2019. So I've had the opportunity to have some business success too, but now my passion really is helping people with the lessons that I've learned because when I went to Harvard, I was sent there by my previous employer, and they had sent me there because I brought in so much business for the company. And I realized when I was there, a lot of people think you go to Harvard and it's all about learning about business cases and things like that. And we certainly learned that. But I had a moment there studying with Bill George, who's the former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, who's an executive fellow there. And he talks about how to find your true north. And it has to do with uncovering moments in your life that affected you at a visceral level. And mine was pretty obvious. It just kind of reached up and slapped me in the face that I'd never really done anything with my personal story, and there was an opportunity to do some good with it. And I was elected to speak at our graduation at Harvard, and it really blew me away. The reaction from people, they had an incredible reaction, but really changed my life, because I didn't really think that it was that big of a deal what I'd been through. I just did what I had to do to get to where I needed to be or where I wanted to be. But I saw firsthand how it could affect other people. I'll never forget there was a guy there who comes up to me afterwards. He's literally just like he's bawling in my arms, and I later found out that this particular classmate of mine had lost his daughter the year before to cancer, and
Oh my
some
God.
something I said that night had helped him. I'm sure it didn't make all of his pain go away, but it helped. And that was a really meaningful moment for me because it made me realize that by helping people in moments like that with the lessons that I've learned through my journey in some bizarre sort of way, it makes going blind worth it. And so now I realize that I lost my vision, but I can help other people find theirs. And so that really has become a passion of mine now. My book was released few years ago with HarperCollins leadership, and I've built a speaking business around that where I'll probably talk to 60,000 people this year across different conferences and things, helping them so that they can cultivate resilient mindsets and not have to be victims of their circumstances and, get the level of happiness and fulfillment that they want in their life. And so building that business has been the sort of entrepreneurial venture that I've been on for the last little bit, but I feel really fortunate to have crossed a few different domains and in the process reinvented myself a few times, from being someone who wanted to go into the medical field to being a technologist to being a finance and sales leader to getting into professional speaking and being an author and all the things and entrepreneurship all along the way.
Blind Ambition. I love the title. And do you have any final words? My last question would just be for our audience on the topic of being unstoppable. Any last piece of advice you want to throw down?
Yeah, if you're willing to accept less than what you define to be successful, then you should expect failure. The people who are unstoppable, the people who get to their goals, are the people who are unwilling to be denied. They refuse to be denied, and they refuse to accept less than success from themselves and from anyone around them. They're
And,
willing to push and do the hard work.
and fail forward, like we all fall down and fail. So, and then that doesn't stop you.
Absolutely.
What's that? I lost.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just picking yourself up one more time, right? That's the difference between success and failure. Some people stay down on the mat and other people choose to get up over and over and over. Like when I learned to ski, I fell a lot, 38 years old,
Right.
totally blind, learning to ski. I fell hundreds of times, hundreds. But
Yeah.
I wanted to grow more than I wanted to stop falling. And the same is true for success. Do you want to be successful more than you will want to avoid the pain and frustration of falling down again? And the answer has always been for me, of course. Yeah, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be successful as long as it's not immoral, unethical, or illegal.
Well, thank you, Chad. You are such a leader in resilience and grit. Where can people find you, your book, your keynotes, speaking opportunities and all that good stuff?
Yeah, go to my website at chadefoster.com.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for being a fantastic guest on the podcast.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation.